Well, good afternoon to you. So I'm going to, just for this next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, I guess take us through a journey which has been entitled Transforming Your IT to become the demands of a global company. And I guess there's a number of huge challenges that all organizations face. And let me just start by, I guess, setting out my own remit and my own journey. Some of you know my career has been very much in international companies and global companies, and also some very iconic brands, right from Transport for London, being the CIO at HMRC, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'll come back to that in a moment. And then Aviva, and now in Specsavers. Now, Specsavers is a global company. It's still owned by the family. It has over 38 million customers, and we primarily operate around the world, giving both optical and also hearing solutions for our customers. We own our own supply chain, our own logistics, as well as our shops and all the platforms that go with that. And I'm going to pick a few of those journeys and some others to illustrate some of the points I want to make today. Specsavers, of course, is all about retail theatre, and it's something I'm going to return to a number of times as we go through this presentation, because understanding that and understanding its impact and its import is very much part of helping us deliver that ultimate global retail experience. And interestingly enough, especially here of all places, we as an organization do not have an e-commerce solution as you would know it. So this has actually been a global experience about bricks and mortar, although there are some headlines coming up in the near future which I refer to as we go along. Let me start by definitions. And definitions are important if you're going to get the context of what I want to share. And I love definitions. This whole Brexit thing has been fascinating. Just recently, the EU has been redefining foodstuffs. You probably didn't know that, all the other Brexit headlines. But I was reading this recently, that they've redefined snails, in brackets, fish, and then in brackets, land-based. So it's important to get your definitions absolutely right. I went out when I was at HMRC with a VAT inspector, a lady in her latter years of her career, and she didn't really know who I was, but it's part of my orientation. As I went out with her, I arrived at her desk in the south of London, in Southwark, and she showed me all the stuff she was going to do and the systems she had used and the material she got together for this VAT inspection. Remember, it's all about the definition. And as she went to go, she unlocked her drawer, and she got out of it her laptop. And I was fascinated, thinking, well, I'm the IT bloke here. This would be fantastic seeing my IT in action. And she took the laptop out of the laptop bag, placed it back in her desk drawer, and locked the drawer, much to my surprise. And I said, the laptop, she said, oh, it's useless. Absolutely. It's too heavy. It doesn't really connect. It doesn't work. Customers can see it from all angles, so nothing's secure. But the bag is phenomenal. It's got 3 layers of locks and zips. I can put papers in here. It is the best thing we've ever had. And when I went to my first IT leaders meeting for a company spending, or organization spending almost $2 billion a year on IT, and asked them how do they think they were doing, of course, in showing off in front of the new CIO, they were doing brilliantly. I recounted my definition of brilliant using my VAT inspector laptop bag user. Those definitions are key. Why do you think the definition of why we need to change is so important? Let me help you, and remember, I'm talking from an IT and a technology standpoint as a CIO. The IT department in most organizations, and particularly in retail, is absolutely and fundamentally dead. The only problem is it doesn't know it. It still wags its tail. It still says the word no. It still charges huge prices and gives exaggerated periods of time to deliver. But unfortunately, it hasn't recognized it needs to change, particularly if your IT is going to meet the demands of a global organization. What do I mean by the fact it's dead? Well, you see, we have said in IT for many years, technology is ubiquitous. We keep saying it is easy to get, it is easy to buy, it is easy to use, it's getting cheaper. The problem is, most business departments in most companies have believed that story and go and buy it for themselves. And then IT gets all upset about shadow IT, separate IT, people do, but we sold the story of ubiquitous IT. We no longer have that role as being the exclusive provider of technology functions. Shadow IT is now the norm in many organizations, something virtually impossible to manage if you want to become a global IT. Secondly, digital has been an interesting development in the technology world. If your company has appointed a chief digital officer and you are the CIO or IT leader, I encourage you to resign immediately and seek a new role, because someone else has the more exciting bit and you have the boring end bit. And that's because CIOs have spent the last 25 years, and I should know, I've been in the industry for 35 years, saying how hard it is, how difficult it is. We talk about these huge legacy nightmare engines, and the board have believed us. And they've given the new stuff and the tasty stuff, which helps us go global, to the CDO, the Chief Digital Officer. Another reason why the IT department needs to change, why I believe it's the walking dead, is because I believe we've lost our credibility. And that credibility has been lost in a number of spaces. First of all, we're awash with agencies supporting us, consultancies, with interims, with day raters, with organizations that are underpinning us. And the business says, well, why am I going via the IT department? If I want a global reach, why don't I reach directly out to them rather than this rather strange, nefarious broker role that sits inside the organization? And last but not least, I believe we need to change the IT department if we're going to transform any technology to meet a global demand, because we are no longer at the heart of a business. And when I arrive in many companies, and I've worked for 18 in the FTSE 100 or the NASDAQ, you arrive in those companies, and particularly my role, I suppose, is because IT is seen as no longer relevant or key. It's seen as an add-on. It's seen as someone you bring in at the end. And if you're talking global, that's an exceptionally dangerous place to be. We need to learn in IT to be different if we're going to enable a company to be global. We need to recognize our role has to change. There's a very famous story told of Napoleon, allegedly on the north coast of France, looking across to the White Cliffs of Dover, raving about this group of shopkeepers, how 200 or 300 years later, things perhaps have not changed. But anyway, and he was in a real funk, in a real anger. He was expressing his frustration with the weather and everything else about being able to invade the UK. And his advisor, who had advised him in many successful battles, a man called Leverve, said to him this: I admire the size of your problem. I just have no solution. And many people in many organizations admire the size of the technology challenge in global IT and global companies, but don't know how to answer it. Well, that is important to change and to get right. Whether we know it or not, this retail is in the fourth industrial revolution. The bringing together of the physical, the digital, and the biological technologies, and IT needs to be ready to handle that. If we're not, then we are in trouble. No doubt you know some of this, but these are retail-specific examples. Have you seen Ubtech's Alpha 2 Lynx robot that now integrates with Amazon Alexa, that's now live and sold to over 1 million customers, providing support to individuals, both direct and indirect? It's not something to talk about, it is live. Have you actually seen Intelligex, who are using craft beer that uses customer feedback from Facebook Messenger to actually decide where to create and how to create the next taste of the next batch of what they're going to produce? Have you seen organizations like Amazon with their new Shop and Go? Although if you come to Southend, we've been practicing that for many years with some of the people who operate. Have you seen Adobe Kickbox that allows us to take instructions and then give a completely different view of how we develop our services? Have you seen the process that allows you to track your food and change order mid-delivery from 4 pizza companies in the US? Perhaps you can come to Specsavers in 3 months' time and see us having a CGI rendition of our services on your face, and so on and so forth. These are structures and organizations and challenges that face us in the fourth industrial revolution that we all face. To do that, IT needs to change to meet the needs of a fast-moving consumer, a digital-savvy colleague, and a globalizing company that wants to be different. So how do you do that? How do you deliver that? Well, I believe as a technology leader, I need to avoid the noise around me. Digital is important, but I'm going to let you into a secret in the IT world. It is the new millennium bug. If you're in business in the year 2000 or year 1999, the millennium bug was your godsend. You could get things signed off in organizations not with any proper governance because everyone was frightened of the year 2000 and what technology would do. Digital is the same. CEOs are frightened not to have what their competitor has. It doesn't matter if their customers want it or not, they need to have it. We need to ignore that noise. The noise of digital, the noise of cloud, the noise of security, and the fashion statements that go with it. You have got to determine if you're going to get your IT department ready for global organizations, what your colleagues, your business, and your customers genuinely need. Let me give you some examples from Specsavers, and particularly from Aviva. You need to get fit for purpose, what your customers actually want. I recently, I say it's not true, about 18 months ago, I traveled on an airline, a very famous airline. And I traveled in a class of seats that allowed me to be greeted as I went off the airway onto the plane. And the young lady greeting me was wearing a pair of Google glasses. And of course, my photo we travel this company regularly. She recognized me from my photo. She recognized my needs from the data appearing in her lens. And she both greeted me correctly. She showed me to my seat correctly. And she even, because I have an unusual drink, got the right drink for me. And I was genuinely impressed. The application of a customer experience. What would have helped, of course, arriving in New York was if my luggage hadn't arrived in Germany. Because although they got the surrounding correct, they had not got fit for purpose, the core purpose to which they operate. We have to redetermine our core purpose to be global. We have to get permissions to be successful. Permissions in IT come from performance, delivery. When I arrived in HMRC, which obviously is a huge organization, it collects over £500 billion a year in terms of taxes, over 300 different taxes. The IT and the technology was phenomenal. And I use broadly the same slideshow wherever I go after a period of time. And the first slide sets out the size of the problem. The second slide sets out how bad it's going to be. The third slide sets out the hope. The fourth slide sets out the price. And the fifth slide sets out broadly the journey. And I went to see my boss, a lady called Leslie Strathy, who was the Perm secretary, and I was at slide 2. I could see tears forming in her eyes. It was bad, worse than bad. Child benefit was struggling, online taxes were struggling, VAT was having a bad day. And by slide 2, as I projected the next 10 years, it was eye-watering stuff. And I felt very confident about my solution on slide 3. But Leslie held up her hand. She's a very polite, a very lovely lady. She said, Phil, this is amazing stuff. You've really learned. Just stop here for a second. The printer in my office has not worked for 7 weeks. When the printer works for 7 weeks, you come back and we'll pick up on slide 3. A small story became famous in HMRC because the strategy, which is now HMRC has gone from 11% online when I first started to 92% online when I left, was all based on what they called the 7-week printer strategy. Permission to deliver a global solution. You need to get sponsorship, stakeholders, even when it's bumpy. As technology leaders, to promise the end result without explaining the bumpiness of the journey is both a lie and a falsehood. All change is bumpy. You need to get the people change right. It's no longer about the IT and the technology. That is relatively simple. It's about the culture of adoption. And when your Australian colleagues or your Taiwanese colleagues or your American colleagues look at an English platform, you can think about their reaction. You have to understand global platforms, global solutions. You need to get passionate and actually deliver the ultimate passionate experience as part of your priority. Business process re-engineering. Retail, particularly IT, is about proof of concept, minimum viable manifestos, not products. The whole concept of agile governance. And by the way, just to help you, agile project methodology and DevOps is dead. It never actually started. It's a lie sold to the industry by suppliers and by coaches. Haven't got time today, email me, link in me, and I'll explain it in more detail to you. In the real world, it doesn't work, and it never was going to work. Product-led modular delivery is all about what we're trying to do. You need to understand what success is. You need to get the basics right. You need to get proper dealing with legacy. And I hate the word legacy. In fact, in Specsavers, you can't use the word legacy for old platforms. We call them heritage because they got us this huge company we are now. They were written by people still working there. Legacy is so negative. Heritage is about evolution from the past to the future. And not least, you need to get data right. Not big data, but data right. So once you've redefined where you've got to go to get to a global company, you then need to redesign your team to deliver it. You need to have a rallying point or a vision you can get around. Something that people can say, do you know what, I understand what this global thing is all about. It's not about what I do, it's about what we do. You explain the journey, explain that curiosity, create that sense of dissatisfaction. People will rarely leave where they are, even if they don't like it, because what they are seeing out there is more nerve-wracking and more worrying, and you're asking them to make that shift. But ultimately, it's about leadership. It's about technology and IT leadership that people can really get behind. And that leadership is critical. It starts, first of all, by having courage. Courage to start a global technology journey that perhaps your organization has never seen before. In our organization, we're going from 2,500 critical platforms globally to 15. That takes courage, not just in the IT department, but also in the areas of serving it, the businesses and our colleagues. There's a very famous story told of a kindergarten teacher, and she'd asked the children to free draw anything they wanted. You remember, these are 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds. And she went to one little girl and she said, well, what are you drawing? And the small girl says, I am drawing God. And the kindergarten teacher laughed. She said, well, look, no one's ever really seen God. And the child says, well, they will in a moment. And it's that courage and that conviction is what IT leadership needs to create that global organization in a global company. We have to take iconic steps. Steps will make a real difference. We have to lay things down which are perhaps important sacred cows to an organization or parts of an organization. We have to help colleagues take steps. When that colleague of yours in retail is standing with a customer across your piece of IT, does it give them confidence and courage, or does it undermine to the point they put it to one side? You need to bring a communication process that helps as you lead this organization, that actually brings advocacy and revolutionizes where you're thinking. Then it's about the cultural model, the cultural change, even being successful in such a way that people are challenged, finding organizations, mainly medium to small organizations, that really can help you. We are working with a Californian startup who challenges every single time they come on the phone or the video or just by their language and their dress. But you know what? It's a cultural embracing. There are organizations out in the hall today, many of which I've seen, some of which I've never heard before, but they are out there because they're small and they're different. And taking those on and building those relationships is so, so important to get right. And then you've got to have belief. Belief in what you're trying to do and the willingness to see it through. The willingness to deliver at the end of it. And last but not least, as an IT leader in an organization that wants to build a truly global IT experience, you have to actually deliver something that changes everything around you. In our company, we refer to that as the thermostat versus the thermometer. A bit like a football manager where there's 50 or 60,000 football managers in the stands encouraging you positively to make a difference. Only one person has the manager's coaching badges and the competence to make the decisions. You have to be that thermostat where you change the temperature, not the thermometer that reflects it. And do you know what? It might even be successful. There's a very famous quote made by Hitler, who wrote a very interesting book. And Hitler said this: if at first you don't succeed, destroy all evidence that you tried. Now that is not the approach we should be taking. Further on in the book he says this: if at first you do succeed, try to hide your astonishment. And our understanding of that success is very important. Learning and making those changes are critical. In conclusion, to get a global IT function, to serve a global company, it comes down to us defining and understanding where we are. It comes down to us to redefine and understand our priorities about user centricity, business centricity, and ultimately delivering a series of global solutions that is led by a leadership that's at the right place at the right time. We need to be, as IT leaders, the leader of a team, an IT team that company needs at this point in its history, with pace, with passion, with change, recognizing it will be bumpy, but also recognizing the end result is what your organization needs. Global IT in a global organization is down to its leaders. Thank you.
So, thank you very much to Phil Pavitt of Specsavers for being with us today. We have time for a few questions. If anybody has a question, put up your hand and we'll send a microphone over towards you. I'm looking, I can't see any hands right. Oh, I've got one. Here we are.
Hi, Phil. It's Tash Tootle from Visa. Great presentation, loved it. Real energy for this time of the day, so well done. How do you sort of stop the IT team being pushed to the back of the queue? Because obviously everyone's talking about digital, and it's the app developers and the collab business and the innovation teams. You know, how your department is a fundamental aspect of making a business run smoothly and for the future. How do you make sure you're not sort of disintermediated by the more sexier buddies on the board?
Yep. So it's a good question. So there's 3 or 4 answers to that. So first of all, the IT team itself have got to stop. I hate marketing or I hate digital T-shirts. Because they walk around saying, I just hate everybody because we haven't got the sexy thing. You've got to change their culture, number one. Number 2 is IT and marketing particularly have to join up at the top. In fact, my fellow marketing director, we co-interviewed each other's digital person, if that makes sense. So I interviewed the digital marketing guy. He interviewed the digital I've got an IT leader that runs the digital area. So we actually joined up. We have to be joined up all the way through. Then, of course, digital is pointless if you're just pimping up your front end. It's got to go into your back end, so to speak. So actually, IT have a fundamental role. And if they stop criticizing the front, get on with the back, if you will, slowly but surely, and we've seen in my last 3 years in Specsavers, their role creeps further and further up, almost to the point perhaps of the UX layer or even beyond. But they have to earn that right, because they're against some of the most sexy agencies on the planet who turns out, well, I don't know about back-end crap, but we can make a website to die for. But of course, any marketing and CEO is going to buy that. But instead of IT being all negative, they need to work their way from the front to the back. Good question.
That's great. Do we have a second question? So my question for you, Phil, is if you were starting again, or if you were starting from here, what one thing would you do differently in your transformation approach?
I think there's a handful of things. I think the first thing is I was a little bit nervous of the retail experience, because you don't want to upset. The shops are everything, right? And we have thousands of shops and 38 million customers, and thousands and thousands of colleagues, and we were too cautious in shipping product. We were very cautious about our new POS. We were very cautious about our new in-store. We decided we were an iPad-orientated company, but we shipped a few thousand. We should have shipped a few tens of thousands. So as confidence grew, my confidence grew, and my teams grew, we should have been confident a bit quicker. Does that make sense? Because the business essentially was sucking it out of us. If we'd have judged their mood better, I think we could have shipped quicker. More mistakes maybe, but we would have failed faster, if that makes sense. I think the second thing I would have learned quicker is that everything is possible. We went for the medium range, the big range partners. Actually, now we've gone for the medium range, the smaller customers, much more confident in those. So that's quite important. The third thing, which I guess we learned a lot of, is retail IT is very expensive via consultancies and third-party suppliers. Retail IT direct is very, very cheap. Big lesson.
That's great. Any more questions from the audience? And so my final question is, once you've got it global, how do you keep it going? How do you sustain it? What is the job that's to do there?
So that fortunately will be the challenge to the next CIO of Specsavers, who takes over in September, because I've done the heavy lifting. But what is interesting about maintenance, it is hard in any organisation. I remember in Aviva, we globalised the whole organisation. It went, this is pretty cool. Now, you see, we're Australian. We'd like a couple of extra things here, and slowly the divergence goes. So you need very strong governance, design governance, very strong user communities, very strong board backing to maintain that global piece. Because ultimately, when you roll platforms, when you upgrade platforms, they become exceptionally expensive. And that initial energy that got you to global, you need to harness it judiciously and carefully at board level to maintain it going forward.
That's great. So unless we have a final question from the audience, I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking Phil Pavitt for rounding off the afternoon in this global growth
Thank you.
conference. Thank you. Thank you, Phil.